we're going to have Dr. Taz Walker talking to us this morning here. Dr. Taz, before I call you, I just wanted to give away the answer to the quiz question, and it was Gaza. Gaza was the road
I
to
knew
Gaza.
it. You know, I was thinking Gaza when we were talking about it earlier, but I didn't want to say that. But yeah, interesting. That is a very famous city.
There you go. Dr. Taz, are you here? Are you with us here on the line?
And I've got another incoming call. There you go.
No. Okay, I think we got you now. Yes, so thank you for that.
That sounds good.
Dr. Taz, we have a very special giveaway today. I'm glad that you are joining us because we have a book here called Creation and Evolution, a thoughtful look at the evidence that a master designer created our planet by Dwight Nelson. And I'm wondering, why do you think it would be interesting or important for anyone to read these kinds of books in this day and age?
Well, because in this day and age, all we see in our culture is that the world was not created; it was evolved. So there's so much misinformation out there. It's really important for people to get information like that in a good book from a good resource, from a good source, to actually change the paradigm, change the way you think. So, yeah, I think it's a very important book for people to read.
Very good. So you listen to Dr. Taz Walker. So if you would like to get that book, it's very simple. You can just text us with the word planet, #planet to 0491 064 669. And we are going to expose one of the biggest fake news that has ever been propagated on our day and age. And it has been propagated for more than 100 years. So Dr. Taz, speaking of which, I actually want to talk to you about dinosaurs today. Because, yes, there has been some news that came in the past couple of years, and more than one time, where soft tissue of actual dinosaurs has been found. Is that true? Is that real? what happened there?
Yeah, that is absolutely true. It goes back to before the year 2000. In the 1995s, around about there, where somebody discovered it to begin with, and nobody believed it. It was a lady by the name of Mary Schweitzer, but since she made the discovery, there's a lot of opposition to that idea. A lot of people just would not believe it because they believe these bones are, 70 million years old, that sort of time, 80 million years old. They believed that, and so they thought, this is ridiculous. There's no way that blood cells, soft tissue could survive for all that time. So that was the obstacle to it. And a lot of people since then have discovered more examples of soft tissue. They've discovered stretchy tissue. They've discovered blood cells. They've discovered DNA. They've discovered various proteins that are, survived in these dinosaur bones. And so it's widely accepted now that this is true, but they're looking for a way to be able to explain it over millions and millions and tens of millions of years. So, and that's what they're trying to do. And they throw things out, like they sort of say, well, it's because of this or it's because of that. They throw these things out and everybody sort of thinks they've solved it when in actual fact they haven't. And then later on they end up abandoning that idea and then they go to something else. So it's a real illustration of the power of the paradigm, you could call it, the way the belief system controls the things they investigate and the things that they say.
Yeah, this is so interesting. I was actually listening to an interview another time with between it was a conversation between a creationist scientist and an evolutionist scientist. And the creationist scientist brought that up, the soft tissues. And it was funny to see what was the response of the evolutionist science. He says, we never thought it was impossible that, soft tissue could survive 70 million years. Clearly it is possible. And it's just that we don't know yet exactly what process of preservation were in place. But, we're still standing firm with the fact that it's 70 million years and we're not open at all to the idea that, these fossils could be much, much younger than that.
Interesting.
That's right. It's a word game. It's a sort of a play. It's a play that they do. And I think if people are a bit aware of what goes on, you see the evidence. You put the evidence forward, and people who believe in evolution and millions of years will reject it, and they will come up with another explanation. But in this case, it's very difficult. They've not been able to come up with an explanation, and so they say, "Look, we're working on it. We'll get there." And so they expect you just to believe, just to accept it because of what they say so.
Yeah, absolutely. So what do you think is remarkable or interesting here about these discoveries of the soft tissues? What is important? Why should we care about it?
Well, I think it is very strong evidence that the world is not millions and tens of millions and hundreds of millions of years old. It's very strong evidence for that, and which is exactly consistent with the Bible. And so where did these bones, how do they get buried, and how do they get preserved? And so it fits very nicely. Well, a biblical, very simple explanation is that these dinosaurs were buried during Noah's flood. As a result, when the Bible says that the whole earth was deluged and destroyed, and everything that had the breath of life in it perished, excepting those creatures which were on the ark, and which came out of the ark and which multiplied up, and which we see in the world today. And except dinosaurs, we don't really see them today, but people did see them. They would have gone on the ark. That's an interesting concept. They would have gone on Noah's ark, and you wouldn't have to take thousands of dinosaurs on because there's various dinosaur kinds.
So is there any evidence that what evidence can we work with to support that theory that perhaps we did have indeed dinosaurs in the ark? How can we come to that conclusion? Well,
they didn't used to call dinosaurs dinosaurs. It was a name that was invented a scientific sounding name to describe some of the fossils which were discovered, and they were invented by the guy who was in charge of the British Museum of Natural History, and that was in something like 1840 that he invented the term dinosaur. But before that, they referred to them as dragons. And people saw dragons, like there's a really amazing story of St. George who killed a dragon because these animals became very fierce, and people were afraid of them, and they would threaten various villages and towns and communities, and people who worked on the land, looked after sheep and that sort of thing. And so,
which is very interesting that you say that, Dr. Taz, because look, I've noticed that so many unrelated cultures around the world, they always have that mythical figure of, or so-called mythical figure of the dragon. We see that in China, we see that in many different cultures, even when you look at, in the Aboriginal culture with the story of the rainbow serpent, which pretty much looks like a dinosaur, or a big kind of a dragon, by the way that it's often described. And, I often wondered, how come all of these cultures came up with that same concept or a similar concept of a dragon, if they were not, if they developed, separately for so many years?
Yes, that's exactly right. And, there's a colleague of ours, who's written a book called Dire Dragons, where he's collected reports of these dragons from all over the world, North America, South America, Asia, Africa, all these different places. And he's got, for example, there are carvings of them, there are etchings of them. People have put them on their buildings, of these dragons. And you can actually identify the type of dinosaur. Like in Asia, there is a temple which has got carvings of different animals on one of the pillars there, of monkeys and birds and things like that. And it's got a carving of a dragon, and you can identify it as a particular type of dinosaur, and it's got scales on its back. And that sort of thing. So
I had actually had the privilege of being there, Dr. Tez, myself. It was
Did you go there?
Yes, I did. It's in Cambodia, in the Angkor Wat. And at that time, I heard about it, but when I visited my trip, I forgot about it. And then while I was looking at it, and this is a temple that was built over 1,000 years ago. And there he was.
Right.
There's a full picture of a stegosaur.
A stegosaur. That's right. And people would say, well, how did they know about a stegosaur? You know, that's the whole thing, because the scales along its back are very distinctive to make it into a stegosaur. And people think, well, how in the world did they know about that? And 1,000 years ago, exactly right. And so that's just another example. But of course, people who don't want to believe that will come up with explanations. They'll say, oh, it was carved more recently or something like that, and they'll try to just discount the evidence. That's what they'll try to do. And but it's very interesting because it's a battle of worldviews. That's what it is. It's a battle of did God create, and did He create the way the Bible said, which was about 6,000 years ago. It was
There's
amazing.
One thing that I don't understand, Dr. Tez, and I wanted to understand, because in theory, when you are evaluating scientific hypotheses, you want to consider all of the possibilities here. But the one thing that I don't understand is why evolutionist scientists, when they are looking into the evidence of design and the complexity of life, why is that they might have been created not even considered as an option, as a possibility? Why is that the only alternative that is just forbidden to be considered? I just don't understand, because it could have been at least a possibility, right, in their minds if you're doing actual science.
Absolutely. Of course it's a possibility. But this particular, well, it's not really science. Science is about observation and measurement. And scientists do a great job of that. And that's technologies developed out of that, and satellites and medicine, all that sort of thing, through making observations. That's right. And so we can certainly observe the dinosaur bones. We can observe the rocks. We can observe lots of things in the world, but we can't go back in time and say how it happened. How did it happen? But the scientists who do this work, basically the whole of the scheme is committed to the concept of naturalism, that everything happened by natural laws, natural processes. There was nothing supernatural that ever happened. So it rules God out. That's the very center of that system. It rules God out. So you can't have anything that sort of fits in with what the Bible says about a global flood, because that destroys the millions of years. And for naturalism, you need millions of years in order for it to be at all believable. And so there was one guy, Francis Crick, who invented I think it was Francis Crick, the DNA.
Oh yeah, the language of God. The book.
That's exactly right. Well, he said, no matter how much something looks like it's designed, he said, we must constantly keep in mind that it happened by natural processes. So they
don't fall to the temptation of believing that there's intelligence behind and design behind life.
And I think a lot of people, once they realize that it's actually the worldview, it's their belief system, it liberates them to think, well, I'm not denying science. They're the ones that are denying the options that could have been created, which is perfectly a scientific solution. And we're not talking about science, we're talking about history, the history of the world. That's what's different.
Yeah. Absolutely. Dr. Tez, we have about a minute left here in this segment. I'm wondering, what would you like for us and for our friends that are listening to this show this morning to take away or to think about, or perhaps to research a little bit more? Perhaps you want to share a little bit more about Creation Ministries and a bit of a reminder of where can people learn more about this topic too?
Yeah, well, it is very important to learn more, and it's a lot of people wonder where. Well, Creation Ministries has a website called creation.com. It's a pretty simple name, and there's lots of articles, and there's a search engine. So you can type in dinosaur soft tissue or dinosaurs, and you can find out about dinosaurs. But it affects everything. It affects dinosaurs. It affects fossils. It affects our medicine and all sorts of things. This understanding of where we came from and how we came about. Were we created, or did we come about just by natural random processes over millions of years? And so that's huge, and it has a big effect on our lives.
Absolutely. Dr. Tess, thank you so much for your time this morning. It was a pleasure, as always, to chat with you. Thanks for bringing so many interesting information and facts that help us to bridge the gap between history and the Bible and intelligent design and creation. We're looking forward to have you again with us next time on the show.